So we hear this all the time, deep learning is data hungry. And here at Affectiva we know this so well because data is so core to everything we do. So tell us more about our data and why it is so important, how we get this data, what we do with it. Let's explore that.
So we have the world's largest kind of people repository. So we have over 7.6 million face videos that we've collected from 87 countries around the world, which is about 4 billion facial frames. So it's a massive data repository. What makes the data extra special is the diversity of the data. And that is really, really important when we're thinking about algorithmic accuracy and avoiding bias.
So to talk a bit more about the diversity in the data, like what type of diversity?
Yeah, so we have definitely gender diversity. Ethnic diversity is really critical, as well as age diversity, but even just the diversity of the context in which the data is collected. So we have people watching online video content, we have people driving around different cities around the world, which just makes for incredibly rich data sets. The way we use the data is, of course, we get part of the data annotated, and then that data becomes training data, and then we fork off some data for validation. And it's really critical that the training data is very diverse, but the validation data should be equally diverse, and we think about that a lot.
Right, and just collecting data only in a lab under simulated post conditions doesn't give you that real world accuracy, right? Because for us, what's critical, our technology needs to work with that high accuracy in real world scenarios. And obviously people don't look the same around the world. The use cases in which technology is applied are very different.
Exactly.
So data needs to be reflective of how the end product is going to be used.
Right. So in fact, for all the work we do in automotive, we send Affectiva driver kits out where we enlist people to kind of record their daily commutes with their consent, of course. And the data has been fascinating. So we see examples of people, you know, being distracted while they're driving. You see all sorts of behaviors.
You know, falling asleep behind the wheel.
Exactly.
The woman with the 2 iPhones without hands on the steering wheel, right?
Right.
It's crazy the amount of things we can capture.
Exactly, but this is how people are driving out there.
Yeah.
And it's really critical that we're able to collect that spontaneous driving behavior and driving expressions.
Because only then can you build algorithms that can capture that real world spontaneity and real world use case.
Yeah, because emotions and cognitive states can be very subtle and nuanced. They're not like the big kind of expressions that we see in all of these, in a lot of these academic data sets. We really need to have these, our data needs to reflect how people express in the real world, and it's often quite nuanced and fleeting.
You mentioned earlier data annotation. So we have our own team of human labelers who do this data annotation. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, we have our own team of data annotators. They are based in Cairo, Egypt, where I'm originally from. And they are essentially certified face readers or fax coders. So they are trained in the facial action coding system. And they essentially, we've built our own infrastructure for annotation. So there's software that they use where they watch videos and they annotate the onset and the offset of eye blinks and squints and smiles and smirks. And a portion of that data, and actually we require that every video is annotated by a number of labelers to ensure kind of the accuracy of these labels, or ground truth labels.
Yeah, because it is the ground truth. It is the data against which the algorithms, classifiers are built and then validated.
Exactly.
So we hear often, why don't you just send this to, you know, get a few folks on Mechanical Turk to label the data?
Yeah, that would be, I mean, just fine if we were annotating for simple expressions like a smile.
Yeah, or is this a cat or a dog?
Right. But a lot of the work we do is pretty nuanced. Like if you want to kind of label for a lip purse versus a lip puck, or you know, versus an eye squint, like these are very nuanced expressions, and it takes about 100 hours to become a certified face reader actually, and then it takes you about it takes you 5 minutes to code 1 minute of video. So it's super laborious, very time intensive.
And you need expertise, right?
Exactly.
And of course it's also a collaborative process in which our science team develop these annotation guidelines, because let's say we're working on our drowsiness classifier, data needs to be labeled a certain way so we can build our classifiers accordingly. And our science team actually documents these guidelines and then collaboratively iterates on that with the labeling team, improves it, and that allows them to really get to that very nuanced and complex data labeling.
One of the areas where we're really pushing the state of the art is in our multimodal roadmap, where we are building algorithms that combine face and voice. So it looks at the facial expressions, but also vocal intonations. So we've had to collect data. We're quite interested in frustration as a state of mind. So we've been collecting data that combines both face and voice, right? To get a better understanding of how frustrated people are.
Yeah, and it's going to be exciting to see what comes out of that, because it's amazing data that we've collected already. Now with these annotations, it allows us to really build very targeted models that go after those type of use cases.
So stay tuned for our findings on what frustration looks and sounds like.
Exactly. So one last topic, right? And I mean, we could talk about data forever because it's such a important part of all the work we do, but also really fascinating in itself, I think. But one thing we hear all the time is, well, what about data privacy? And what are you doing with this data? And how are you getting this data?
Yeah, that is one of our core values as a company. So all of the data that we've collected so far is with people's consent.
Yes.
And we're very adamant that people are very clear that we're collecting the data, that they understand how the data is being used. I think this is really critical.
Absolutely, it's super important. And then when our technology is applied in the real world, we run in real time on device locally, right? So we don't even have to send our data to the cloud or capture or store it elsewhere. We can basically derive the human state metrics right there on the device.
Exactly.
So lots more we could talk about on data. I have some ideas, but let's keep those for a next video perhaps.
Yeah.